Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. We're going John, Dave, and myself. We're going to look back at Leinster's victory against Munster in the Aviva Stadium, all the other Pro 12 action, and then have a good old discussion about some rugby issues. So, boys, 16-13 against the old enemy. Win is a win is a win.
Yeah, I think you can almost sum it up by saying Munster are a fairly mediocre team, and we're 3 points better than mediocre. I mean, you can really say a whole lot more than that, really.
That kind of does sum it up.
Yeah.
For the neutral, it was an absolutely dreadful game. It was full of endeavour, not so much skill, and not the cohesion. There was no cohesiveness, whatever the right adjective is there. Neither team were putting it together. They were just both brawling with each other and
Did you
spoiling
think it was
each
a
other.
tactic from Munster that it's nearly every single breakdown they put a man down on the ground?
Of course it is. It's been
But
a tactic of Munster for years.
But just completely took any
Yeah.
momentum or pace or continuity out of the game and destroyed it for the punters.
I wouldn't blame it all on Munster now.
Who
by any stretch.
ultimately
They put a guy
ultimately
on the ground every time the whistle blew.
pay their wages. They buy the subscriptions to Sky Sports. They pay for season tickets. They fork out 35 or 55 quid to go to the Aviva. And it just destroyed the match as a spectacle.
Well, it's something I was thinking about after the game is the whole spectacle idea. Should rugby be more concerned with entertaining folks in the way the rugby league was in the past? Rugby union wasn't ever going to be when it was amateur, but now that it's 20 years professional, should it be? And I don't mean bringing on dancing girls. I mean tweaking the rules slightly, like they possibly have done in the Southern Hemisphere with their generally ignore the old forward pass a little bit, or they allow feeds in the scrums more. They over the years, maybe not so much now. They just try to generate running rugby a little bit more than we do, because they know they're in the entertainment business.
To know, say in the entire Six Nations, and compare that to say the rugby championships, how many minutes of scrums there would be in an average game. I'd say
a lot
now,
more.
admittedly, the weather might be a bit worse in the Northern Hemisphere, but still, New Zealand has some bad rainy days.
Especially the South Island, yeah. Like weather aside, yes, it's a factor, but it's not as big a factor as it's made out to be. It's more of an attitudinal thing,
But you'd swear though that, especially listening to some commentators, that scrums are a scourge on the game.
Yeah, but you see, that's their entertainment professionals. They work in the media. That's their job. I mean, it's those dirty scrums and those horrible flankers are interfering with their product. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to.
That's going too far the other way.
And to be honest, they can fuck off. The reality is that the reason why the game is as it was is because the teams are quite poor at the moment. They're not playing well.
No.
Leinster certainly aren't.
Come on, that's summed up by the fact that Johnny Sexton, his try ended 260 minutes, which
of a drought.
Doesn't, what's 260 minutes? It's 4 hours and 20 minutes without scoring a try.
If that happened in New Zealand, the whole team would be sacked. The coaches would be sacked.
Look, I don't care what happens in New Zealand. It makes no difference to the Pro 12.
I'm just making the comment. But
maybe one of the problems the Pro 12 has is we spend too much time looking at New Zealand.
Johnny Sexton also summed up one of the problems that they have in where he said he was using Irish calls.
Yeah, he was getting a bit confused which calls he was using.
And poor Altio was looking at him going, huh? A what?
He doesn't remember them if he's playing for England next year.
So, it's obvious that that was his first game back after Six Nations. Hadn't played for Leinster.
Only had 2 training sessions with Leinster.
Exactly. So you've got to expect that team to gel a bit over the next. Now, luckily, we've got Edinburgh up next to, or not a pushover by any stretch of the imagination, but
they are at home. We're at home. The game's at home, which is a big.
So it'll give us a chance to build a little bit, and even Ulster, if we can do well in that game, and if the Scarlets beat Glasgow, then we'll have a little bit of leeway to do some development in Ulster, because the result won't be as critical.
James Murphy asked us on Twitter, any ideas on the lack of creativity recently? Lack of pace out wide the problem, or creativity in the centre?
That's a very good point.
I don't think the problem is out wider in the centre. I think the problem's in the coach's box.
I think the problem is all of those.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah,
there is a lack of pace out wide. You can't deny that. We don't have feckin' Brian Habana or whoever out on the wing. B, we've got a centre pairing that isn't ideal. Like Robbie Henshaw and Ringrose, after they get a few games together, should be a lot more what we're looking for, and especially with if they get games with Sexton, that's going to be a lot more. Like poor Al Benteo, he comes from playing no rugby union for 10 years into playing for us, getting injured, comes back, develops as a 13, and then he's put in his
Isn't that kind of the job of the coach?
Oh,
fix
absolutely,
that,
yeah.
To find a way to work within that.
I was
structure.
getting to him.
I mean,
so the centre pairing doesn't have a lot of creativity because it doesn't have a lot of experience, or is probably not well suited.
Do we have any significantly less pace out wide than we had in 2012 or 2013?
Well,
do we?
Have a lot of the
I don't
same
think we
bodies,
do.
and they're a bit older and slower. You know?
Maybe. I don't think there's any significant difference.
Luke, maybe.
Well, we haven't really had Luke, have we?
No, I'm saying Luke back in a few years ago compared to
I
this
mean,
season.
we weren't a team that won games or created based on pace. We did it on cleverness.
So, well, the next element of that thing is that we've got a rookie coach who's in his first season as a head coach. Gervin Dempsey is in his first season as a top line backs coach. You're bound to.
The backs can do whatever they want, but they can't do anything without the ball.
Yeah.
When we have a line out 5 meters from the line,
don't go there, please.
Well, I mean, that's why the backs aren't creative, is because they're not getting any ball. When we have a line out, as I said, 5 meters from the line, and it's thrown 15 meters into the line out, no one jumps
over everybody.
And it's picked off at the back, at the tail of the line out, and that just didn't happen once. That happened probably 3-4 times during the game.
There's a whole bunch of reasons why things aren't working in the back line. I think coaching, because the coaches are responsible for the pack as well.
Well, that was my point exactly. I've seen times, just to finish off that sweep of on that question. I've seen several times where I've questioned selections that I never would have questioned under, say, to go to the other end of the scale, Joe Schmidt. Anytime I've ever found myself, when Joe Schmidt was the Leinster coach, questioning any of his selections, after the game I went, that's why he did that. When in a lot of the ones that Leo Cullen has put in, I've gone, maybe I was right.
Yeah,
that wasn't a great idea.
Well, I'm surprised that we've seen Jordy Murphy have a little bit of resurgence in form.
Yeah.
Over the last few weeks, but that's because he's been selected as best position of 8.
Also because he's not injured anymore, which I never knew he was injured at the time.
But he was practically anonymous at 7. On
Saturday. I think that it was a strange decision. I think that Leinster decided not really to do that much with the breakdown. That they weren't going to be interested in the breakdown. If you watch the match, Leinster don't really have any interest in what's happening at the breakdown. At best, they want whoever's there to slow down opposition ball. So, is there a point? That's possibly the point behind. That was possibly the thinking behind the selection of Murphy. That it doesn't matter if you pick an out and out 7, because we're not going to go for that ball anyway. We're going to let Munster have as much ball as they like,
as long as it's shit ball.
Yeah. So maybe that was an element. I don't know. It wasn't a selection I'd make. I mean, if I was picking a 7, as things currently stand in Leinster, he'd be my third choice 7.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, the other selection that we possibly questioned was not starting Ross. And when you don't start Mike Ross, he's never going to be a great impact sub. I mean, what's he going to do? Solidify the scrum? Do you need your scrum No, you need a guy to come on after the scrum has been pounded into the ground and run around a bit. So he's kind of the opposite of an impact sub. He's the man who softens the other side up for the impact sub. So deploying the 2 tight head props in the order that he did, I wasn't a fan of. And even after the game, I don't think it really did. It didn't affect the game.
But it didn't affect it positively either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it possibly could have. Tadhg Furlong could have possibly made a difference coming on fresh at 60 to some poor lad that Mike Ross had ground into the ground over 60 minutes, so that's just 2, and they were the 2 that most people picked out, Jordy Murphy over Josh van der Fleer and Tadhg Furlong over Ross, but there were possibly a couple of others. Now, I probably would have been one of the ones calling for Ben Teo to slide in beside Gary Ringrose, because when he was at 13, Gary Ringrose wasn't going to get a sniff, because he's a player we have all season. Teo, now he's gone in X amount of matches. But, it did make a lot of sense of use of resources to have Teo at 12.
But Teo
But
does.
it hasn't really.
Well, he did. I mean, he was fantastic. He was outstanding against the Ospreys on the 5th of March. But
Don't get me wrong, he had a good game the other
well,
day.
it's the way he's deployed. I mean,
Exactly.
if he's deployed to take it up the middle, he's going to lay people out in front of him.
Yeah.
But he's not going to distribute, and he's not going to get a backline moving. And
But he's not going to do that if that's not his job.
no,
If he's
he's
told
not.
to go out there and hit it up and start the next phase of play, and that don't bother trying to offload because we're not going to have any trailing runners, which there weren't. I mean, Ben Teo could have offloaded 100 balls and they all would have fallen on the ground because there was no
Yeah.
trailing runners. It's just, I mean,
He's
and that's
a-
another function. If you don't pick a 7,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have that guy. You don't have the shadow, as Josh Cromfeld used to call it, his role. If you don't pick a 7, you don't have that guy there. So Teo isn't there to offload. It's not that he doesn't offload, because we've seen him offload. We've seen him.
He can
he's
do
a
it, lovely,
fantastic
yeah.
offloader. I mean, we see him play for both in league and union.
He's great commitment, though, for a guy who's checking out in 5 games time or whatever amount of
I
games
mean,
time.
you summed it up there, because at the very end of the match,
He exploded off
I
that.
mean, it was almost American football style tackles.
People were talking about, was he onside? He's no way he could have been onside and made that tackle. The thing is, if you watch it,
He was.
onside. He was just so determined. He exploded off. You know the way the coaches talk about exploding off the line. He exploded off the line, and Sherry just did not know what hit him.
Yeah, but as well, he tackled the ball rather
Yeah.
than the
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Or hit man and ball, but
Good
he
old
actually hit
rugby
the ball.
league
Yeah.
tactic.
I thought you could, whatever. I mean, there are questions about the way he is being utilised, but his commitment is huge. I mean, in fairness
Yeah.
to him, he's a good pro. He's a really good pro.
I'd have no issue with his professionalism, his commitment, all of that. So I think he's excellent, and especially considering he's leaving. How many guys just check out early when they're leaving a club?
Yeah.
He hasn't. He's great that way. The only thing I'd say is that the money he's going to be on in Worcester, he's probably not worth that much to us, because that's a huge sum of money to us, not because he's not worth it. But
Yeah.
out of our budget, that's probably not worth what he gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
then
he is.
you have an international 12.
And you have an
coming.
international 12 coming in.
One lad who has got an awful lot of criticism is Keane Healy for the tackle that he put in.
What tackle?
What tackle? Okay, but I just feel so sorry for him.
I do too. Yeah, exactly.
He's just like, and it's not as though, we know he's a great player.
Mm-hmm.
He comes onto the pitch after 60 minutes or whatever. He knocks on, he fumbles and he knocks on his first pass, and then he gets sin bin 5 minutes later. Like, he just needs to go on holidays to Barbados, not see a rugby ball for 4 months.
Until
And come
But
back.
pre-season.
there's two. The thing about Keane is, I mean, at the moment, Drains would look down on the way he's playing. I mean, they'd kind of be ashamed of that. But he's one of my favourite players. He's one of Leinster's best players. He is.
Absolutely.
He's a genuinely world class player, but he's not at the moment for whatever reason. Now, there's two ways of doing it. One is, like you say, go away, Keane, come back in August, nice and refreshed, get your ankles healed, everything healed, your hands healed, everything,
neck.
the whole lot. Come back, fine. The other is you're going to play your way back into form, and you and I know which one will be chosen, because we have a tour in South Africa. There's no way we're going down to a hard scrummaging country with hard pitches without Keane Healy.
Not a
It's
hard
just-
bastard like that.
It's just not happening.
Oh, he's an IRFU asset, and
Yeah.
a very well paid one.
So he'll be.
They'll want to utilise
They'll use
him.
you're going to play yourself into form method. I don't know. Keane is a guy. He loves playing for Leinster. He really does. I mean, it means a lot to him. If he was made kind of go away and have a rest, I don't think he'd be all that happy with it in and of himself.
But sometimes that
But
decision.
sometimes you do have to do it. But I mean, nobody will be more upset with how he's playing at the moment than him.
Of course, and I mean, he has been a wonderful player for us over the last 7 or 8
And
years.
will be again.
Yeah, hopefully he will.
It's also that tackle. They've got very hot on those tackles quite
Yeah,
recently.
they-
Like if Dan
He got
Lydiot,
away with it 2 years ago.
I was about to say, if Dan Lydiot made that tackle maybe 3 years ago, people would have been clapping and oh, look at the way he went so low, isn't he great? Now Keane Healy's doing it, and he's getting a yellow card. These things change.
Speaking of yellow cards, Owen McDermott asks, should Zebo have been penalised for putting the ball out at the end of the first half? Yes. There's no question about it. It was a penalty, at least a penalty. I remember now. It's not the same situation. Well, it might necessarily be. There was nothing between Simon Zebo, the ball, and the line except his action. So would it have been a penalty try? Don't know.
Well,
Would it have been a yellow card? Don't know.
Redden was
Possibly
furious
one
with
of
him.
the three.
With the referee.
And
Yeah.
Sexton with
And,
the touch judge.
and like it even surely, okay, I know it was on the last on the stroke of half time, but would it have made any difference if the ref said, like, hang on, I'm going to go upstairs and have a quick chat with Simon McDowell?
Yeah. The other side is, I mean, he did it again. So he did it previous to that.
Yeah.
On a cross kick, he slapped the ball forward.
Yeah.
And again, he was
And
the
it was a
only
scrum, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was the only
Should be a
guy
penalty.
there.
And Earls did one similar
Yeah.
as well. It was like an up and under, and he batted it
I
forward.
mean, he kind of came through the Six Nations with his reputation at least intact, if not enhanced. But I'll tell you, he was a comedy rugby player. He was very poor. He really was.
Yeah, well, isn't that the frustrating thing about Simon Zebo? He can be so incredible.
It certainly
and
should have been a penalty.
yeah.
I mean, there's no
so
question
checked
about
out.
that.
Times.
Isn't, like, I suppose, you know, we got away with it at the end. Like, should they have taken? They had a penalty. Should they have taken their points?
Yeah,
I think they'd be mad to, because I'll tell you why.
mad to, or mad
Yeah.
not to.
No, I think they'd be mad to take their points,
Right.
and I'll tell you why. Because if they'd have won that game, they would have had some shout of a top four, and if they lost that game, which they did, they're not going to miss out in the top six.
They only lost out
it's like
on a point. They got a point out of the game. If they had taken their kick,
yeah,
they would have got 2 points.
2 points
so
out
they
of
only
the game.
missed out on a point.
So you know, and the extra 3 points would have made top four feasible.
But I think in the heat
They
of the
would've-
moment, they were going for the win. You know what I mean? Rather than
But you see, there were
predetermined.
There's a number of factors. One is that Keatley had missed an easy, no, not an easy, a kick earlier.
Yeah, but this
Now,
was in front of the 6th.
Before that, they'd had a penalty that they took. I think they kicked for the corner with maybe 4 minutes to go. If they kicked that and got the draw, that left them 4 minutes
To do it, yeah.
to do something. 4 minutes against
Yeah.
13.
That might have been worth taking. But
It was actually, I think, it was the penalty that Keane Healy, maybe it wasn't it Keane Healy's the penalty. He
yeah,
conceded.
that was from the halfway line.
Yeah, it's still
almost,
kickable though. I
It
mean,
was, yeah.
I've seen Keatley kick from further.
Yeah.
We'll have to discuss Keatley and Foley and the reaction to that, by the way, at some stage. But so if they'd taken their kick then, taken the draw, and then come back again,
That one might have been worth taking, but certainly the maybe Keatley didn't fancy it, maybe because
Maybe.
it was quite far out. It was right out near the halfway line. But the other one, yeah,
But
no, I
more
I don't see it.
worryingly for Munster, they had a 4-on-1 with a man in the bin,
yeah,
and it was very good. It's intelligent, smart defending from McFadden. He kind of rushed up and forced the prop to come back in. Ryan was to come back in on the inside, but blinkered play by the prop that he couldn't figure it out that there was 3 men outside and 15 yards to run into.
a lot of defence is about making the opposition make a decision, make a choice.
early.
Right? What Fergus McFadden did was he gambled on the fact that the guy who had his hands on the ball was a prop, and the choice he'd make would be a conservative one. That's got to be the thought process.
Yeah,
And that's what happened. I mean, if that was a back or a back row forward, Fergus McFadden mightn't have gambled, but they would have scored.
But-
So it was a perfect storm, but it was a perfect storm that worked in McFadden's favour.
It was very smart play by McFadden
Oh, yeah.
to force that. You know,
Yeah.
and he gets a bit of stick. He's kind of doesn't have pace, not flair enough, not flash enough. But it's these little small things that he did
But
very
the thing
well.
about Fergus McFadden, he's one of those
another
guys.
guy with huge commitment.
Every single coach he
professionalism.
works with picks him.
Do you
He
remember?
always gets picked.
Do you remember he scored the try against Claremont, Indy Viva, a few years ago,
Yeah.
maybe 3 years ago? But we got a losing bonus
That's
point
right, yeah.
that
Well, there you
kind of
go.
kept us in the heel of the
Yeah.
hunt.
Sticking into the end. That's
Yeah.
that's his gig.
But that's what Fergus McFadden does. I mean, Joe Schmidt always picks him. Always picks him. And every coach since has.
And Joe Schmidt's selection of him in the Six Nations match against Italy was justified. He came on, you know, I remember he came on, he came in for McCluskey,
Yeah.
but he came on at left wing, right wing, and centre
Yeah.
and scored a try.
Yeah.
We'll have to
Okay,
start
we've
calling
been
him
quite-
Fergus left, right, and centre.
We've been quite negative Have we any positives from this game?
Yeah,
No, I think
Johnny Holland was good.
I think we said last week that the game would be decided at half back and the back row, and it was. Obviously, Conor Murray was excellent for Munster, I thought.
Super. His
I
box
thought-
kicking was.
I thought Johnny Holland started well,
Johnny Holland was
but
great.
Sexton was
Should've
just
left him
on
on.
an. Oh, he should have. Sexton just as good as he ever was. And
Sexton's in good
we
form.
we won the battle of the back row. We negated Stander's effect. Perhaps Munster negated themselves by playing him out of position at number 8, maybe. I mean, the guy was he our best player in the Six Nations?
Yeah.
What position did he play in Six Nations?
I
He played
know.
number 8 anyway.
It's about balance, though. You know, I was thinking about this.
If only that they had another number 8 in Munster. Do they have another number 8? Perhaps even a lad from Wicklow or Kildare or somewhere. Do they now? They do. So balance me backside.
Yeah, well, he was playing second row.
Yeah.
Sadly.
He came on as a sub at second row.
Yeah, but,
I would have started Sander. I would have started Copeland at 8 and Sander at 6.
well, it makes me think of like when the Ireland back row of Sean O'Brien, Peter O'Mahony, and Jamie Heaslip, which was the first choice back row maybe a year ago when they were all fit. It's such a different dynamic to the one with, let's say, Josh van der Fleer and CJ Stander.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a much more like Heaslip's role in that back row is completely different
Yeah.
to what it is
Yeah.
with O'Mahony, because O'Mahony is he's much more of a 6.5. He's in over the ball the whole time. He's
But the
he
difference
does
is,
a lot of good
the difference
stuff.
is Joe Schmidt doesn't coach Munster.
I noticed that.
It's
Yeah.
a real fucking drop off between who coaches Ireland and who coaches Munster. And
Yeah.
and the fact of the matter is, one of the reasons why Leinster won is that we did win that battle of the back row. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
and I think that if you play guys, play them in their best positions.
Hmm.
You know, we saw a Six Nations campaign where a guy is outstanding in a fairly mediocre team, but it's still outstanding in a certain position, and then you go next game, different position entirely. I just don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, he has been an 8 all along, though. In fairness,
Well,
he only
you-
moved
you-
to 6.
You mentioned
for
it there a few minutes ago, Dave. Foley's reaction to bringing on Keatley in place of
He's an
Holland.
experienced international.
One cap.
Yeah.
An experienced international against Italy. No, he doesn't have 4 caps.
Does he?
Again, didn't he play against Georgia?
America or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
Yeah,
did.
he played against. He's got 4 caps. United States, Canada, Georgia, and Italy, unless I'm mistaken.
You could well be right. His form is in the jacks, and it's confidence. It's a confidence issue.
Especially
I mean,
when he missed that kick.
That guy, as a youngster, was such a talented rugby player, and he's just never hit the spot. He's very close to hit it, and he's had some brilliant games,
Do you know
but he's just
the
never.
highest points scorer of all time for Connacht? And you think how many years Eric Elwood played
There
there?
you go.
I think perhaps the psychological, like you were saying about the psychological thing about maybe Keatley, is that he's always been in the shadow of great men. When he was at Leinster, he was behind, he was behind Felipe, he was behind Gordon Darcy, because there was talk of him playing 12 as well. Then he went to Munster or Connacht, and he was in the shadow of Elwood, and of course Munster, the biggest shadow of all in terms of who he was succeeding.
Mhm.
And the thing is, they haven't been quick to put their arm around him,
Mm.
because he's not one of them.
The knives are out.
Yeah, he's not one of them.
Yeah, well, Foley has, in fairness, but the Munster fans, a lot of them don't have any time for him. And like when Hanrahan was there, it was all just, what are you wasting your time on Keatley for when we have Hanrahan? And now that Hanrahan's gone, it's, why did you waste the time on Keatley and now we've lost Hanrahan? And, you've got your man Bill Johnson
Yeah.
bubbling under a few years from now. And you've got Johnny Holland, who's,
He did very well. I thought he was very, very good.
I thought he was very good as well, and he's kicked one from the sideline as well, which in Lansdowne Road in front of probably less than 40,000 people, but still
We'll say 43,000 just for the sake of argument.
we'll say round 40,000 people. That's pretty impressive for a guy, and he's not that young. Like, I mean, Johnny Sexton was stepping up in Croke Park when he was that age, or close to it. And we think of him as a late starter in some ways. We think of him as late hitting the headlines for such a guy who went on to be such a influential player.
I thought he played very, very well. I don't know what.
I'd give him a go if I was
I
Anthony
don't.
Foley.
I mean, it's just another line on the list of things that have happened in Munster under Foley.
Yeah, he's not having a good run of it, is he?
No. I think perhaps head coach isn't his best position. Perhaps a unit coach he might be better suited to.
It's funny though that they seem to be going to bring in a director of rugby over him and let him specialise more on his on the on-field side of stuff, when effectively that's what they had with Rob Penny. And in fairness, Rob Penny was offered an extra year, but
from
he
what I
didn't
read,
want.
Gareth Fitzgerald said that the director of rugby he brought in will be an on-field role.
Well, we'll see.
So I don't know, but the thing is that to go back to the original thing, that's kind of there were positives. I mean, the Leinster back row I thought was excellent, perhaps with the exception of Jordie Murphy, who was playing out of position.
Ringrose had a few flashes.
Ringrose had a few
Sexton
flashes,
was great.
particularly in the second half. Sexton was good. Dave Carney didn't notice him at all.
No, he had one slip at the very start.
Yeah,
Was it?
yeah.
I thought Kirshner was
got
poor
stuck in
as
a
well.
little bit.
He started off very
Kirshner-
poorly. Kind of got back into it, but it just hasn't worked out for him here. Apart from that, I mean, it's very hard to pick out.
Stunning.
Yeah,
Games
I mean,
by anyone.
to a certain extent, you're trying to pick flowers out of shit. Because I mean, that was a big marquee game, but it wasn't a good game. I mean, there's no.
Okay, it wasn't a good game, but the most important thing was the W and the 4 points. That we got from it.
Absolutely.
And it pushes us up into first place.
Yeah.
Well, we're joined
Top of the league, Ma.
with Connacht. And we're 5 ahead of Scarlets. Scarlets slipped up. They were beaten at home to Cardiff.
By
Cardiff, yeah.
that
You're-
side, they're coming good. I told you, didn't I?
Your Mystic Meg, your prediction. Next year, is it? Or will they,
Next
will
year.
they qualify
They're
for
going to the
Europe
league
this year?
next year. They're going to win the league.
Cardiff, good result, and of course the other game, the other Interpro.
Well, that was. I mean, we said everything about there's fellas coming back from internationals. They're forgetting their calls with their clubs. They haven't trained much. There's one team nullifies the other. All the usual cliches rolled out. But the night before, Connacht go up to Belfast.
Yeah.
They are willing to play rugby. Both teams willing to play rugby. It was a fantastic game.
In fairness, neither team has any choice in the matter because they're not going to stop the opposition.
No,
Are they the second and third worst defence in the league?
probably are. But and also they made mistakes, but they were willing to throw the ball around.
Well,
I mean,
if we're going for an entertainment business, that's the kind of game you want to
but
see.
that try that Connacht scored. I mean, that was fantastic.
Oh, it was a lovely try. It was really, really nicely done.
And it's
The dummy at the end was beautiful.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it's just it's a mindset that you take, like say Muldoon took the contact, but he looked. How many times have you seen it, fellas getting tackled and going to ground and waiting, waiting for the support to come to set up a ruck? He tried his hardest to stay on his feet to offload, and there was a guy coming up on his shoulder for
Perfect.
the offload.
Yeah, it was a perfect move. Connacht just ran out of bodies, and there were two of them in the bin. But they defended so well for
Do you
a
think
team with
Connacht kind of
13 men?
selected a team with Grenoble
Yeah.
in mind? Like
Yeah,
they didn't
possibly.
risk people.
I mean, there was key guys for them who weren't risked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But then I suppose that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, they have to balance. They're fight. They are. I mean, it's hard to fight on two fronts, and they are on two fronts.
But they're going to do it.
And
There's no point in pissing about
so
it.
they do have to make selections. I mean,
I'd imagine they were like, well, we've got 4 games left, 4 regular season games this season. We can, let's try and win our 2 home games in the league.
Yeah.
And give the
Grenoble a good rattle.
yeah, and I'd say that's the mindset. I mean, in fairness to them, I mean they were well beaten at one stage and came right back into it. Nearly snatched a losing bonus point.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know. I mean, they obviously got what they wanted out of it in that none of their key guys got hurt.
Losing bonus point would have kept them top of the
Yeah.
league.
And their 4th choice out half had a pretty good game.
Yeah. He seems to be a decent enough player actually because he was decent enough against us as well.
So it leaves the league very interesting looking. Glasgow are the key to the end of the league. They've got 4 games. 2 of them are against Zebre. The home one first next weekend when nobody else is playing, and the away one 2 weeks later.
They also play Scarlets.
I was about to say that this is the key. The other 2 games they have are the 2 key games really in the league for the top 4, because Scarlets they have up next, and who, if Scarlets can win that game, it's great for Leinster, because otherwise you're looking at Glasgow possibly going to the sports ground, able to go top of the league with a win, which we don't really want. And if Connacht beat Munster, they're going to keep their side of the bargain up, and they could end up playing for a home semi against Glasgow in the end. So that game between Connacht and Glasgow on the last day, and the game between Scarlets and Glasgow on the last day, are really pivotal.
Jeez, fair play to Glasgow playing 2 games on the last day.
Sorry, the Scarlets one is up the next league weekend. So that's absolutely gonna define the league, and if we can get the right result in those 2 games, or even get the right result in the first one, it takes the pressure off us hugely, because Cardiff did us a favour, and if Scarlets can get it up and do us a favour back and beat Glasgow, way hey.
What we have to do is we have to get our shit together.
Big time.
Not big time. We've got a game against Edinburgh, which will help in the integration of players. Then if we go up north and take a win out of that match.
It's all good then, yeah.
You know.
Doesn't matter what anyone else does.
Um,
That's the thing about being top of the league, it's all in your hands.
Yep.
And if you've got Treviso to finish off, you're laughing,
Yeah, you've got that. You've hopefully got that extra point.
Those 2 wins would seal first place, absolutely.
I'd see us taking 2 wins, the 2 home matches of wins, and I'm not sure if we're playing well enough to go to
Ravenhill and win.
Well, the thing is,
we might not need to. If the Scarlets beat Glasgow, we won't need to win in Ravenhill.
Ulster are playing a very expansive top of the field game when they're let. They're not going to be allowed to play the way they want to play against us.
Yeah,
that's true.
And we have, the game against Munster, we brought a lot of trouble on ourselves, in fairness, if you think about it, right?
They kept us in the game though by knocking on a lot and doing a lot of stupid shit,
But they could have won us in the last minute.
I know.
They blew that.
What I'm saying is we put ourselves in that situation in the first place. There was no need for us to be in that situation. Also, there was no need for us to be as poor as we were in the line-out. That was a complete systems failure.
Yeah.
But Zebo could have scored. There was a break on the line, and I think Sexton kind of got hands in. Now they got a penalty out of that, but he still could have gone over. They had a blue of 4-on-1 or 3-on-1, whatever it was, and they had other penalty opportunities.
On the other hand, they could have had a couple of more yellow cards as well. The swings and roundabouts. But if you look at the game as it was played out,
keep getting sucked back into Leinster Munster.
Yeah. If you look at the game as it played out, the trouble we got, we caused a lot of trouble for ourselves that was unnecessary if we had been more professional or more precise with what we were doing. There was no need to be so flahoolic with the lineouts. That was a complete systems failure, and it's easy to blame the hooker, but it's not always the hooker's fault.
Especially when the ball sails over every single person and they're not in the air.
He doesn't call a line out. He doesn't lift. He's not a lifter. He's not a jumper. So I always say any successful line out has at least 3 successful components. So.
There's plenty of blame to go around there. There was plenty of shit lineouts.
To bring it back, what I'm saying
to blame one on each of those.
We've got the game against Edinburgh, which is at home, which gives us an advantage to get our shit sorted out in terms of our line out sorted. Our scrum was a bit.
Oh, hold on, we had them all.
We did. No, it has to be said. We had them all. We had a number of mauls, a number of very successful dynamic mauls.
I don't mean one maul. I mean maul was.
It's a pity we didn't win enough line out ball to do something with it,
isn't it?
But you see, if you start tying all these strings together, and we've got another question actually from Alan Kavanagh. If we win this thing, will we be the worst team ever to win?
Bit harsh, is it?
If we win this thing, I'd say the only way anyone will win this, if we win this thing, is by getting better. We're not going to win it playing like we are. So if we win it, we will have gotten better by default.
It's a self-fulfilling.
Exactly. What's it?
Argument.
It's a self-fulfilling thing.
This weekend coming is obviously the European Champions Cup quarterfinals.
That's still on.
No, there's no rugby on this week. Tripping.
But if you look at some of the fixtures in that,
forgot about that.
Are we a better team? Would you think we're a better team than Exeter?
Actually, no. I've watched Exeter. I've been watching some
Exeter, a cracking team.
I've been watching some Aviva Premiership this year. Against my better judgment, I kind of got sucked into it. And some of the rugby, Exeter are actually a lovely team to watch. Really, really good team to watch. And I'm not sure. I don't think we are a better team than Exeter.
Okay.
Not as we're.
We
not
might
as we've
have
been
better
playing this
individuals, but
Yeah.
we're not a better
No.
team.
Okay, but what about Bath then?
Well, they're playing like drains.
You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, it's you can be mega doom and gloom and say, you know, there's an awful lot of negativity, whether it's on the TV or in the press or on the radio about the match in the Aviva the other weekend at the weekend, the pomp and ceremony of it, the music and so on, and the standard of the play, and you know, you can have all that. But
Just to
but
defend the
it's-
music for a second, I
Were
wasn't
you
a
top ranking.
I wasn't a fan of all the song and dance going on where they were singing our chants. I thought it was a little bit contrived, but the band themselves were
I thought they
bloody
a good
great.
band. Yeah, I thought they were a
I
good
was
band.
really
Yeah.
enjoying them before the game.
Yeah.
Thought they were excellent. They
I love.
were obviously instructed to sing.
I love ska. It's one of my.
I love ska too.
Yeah, I
yeah.
love a bit of ska.
I was sitting beside a guy and he said, "Oh, I'm old enough to remember this the first time around." And I'm going,
The 1950s.
"You were around in the 50s in Jamaica?" I didn't say that, of course, because
Far too polite.
I knew by
You
looking at
can, see, you
him.
can see the two musos going. The 1950s.
He turned out to be. He turned out to be nice guys.
I thought they were a good
I'm
band.
glad I
thought they-
didn't slag him.
I thought they were really good players. Perhaps maybe not necessarily during the match, as in when the game was in play. But apart from that, I mean, it was a minor concern, a minor irritation. I'd much rather listen to them than see a fucking bunch of stupid cunts doing a Mexican wave.
Amen.
Yeah. So anyway, I hate the Mexican wave. I hate it with a passion. Anyway, what were we talking about? I'm filled with hate for the
It
Mexican
was
wave all
actually
of a sudden.
it was actually me who
Yeah.
interrupted Jason there when he was started to talk
Yeah,
about the
sorry.
music.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're talking about it's all doom and gloom, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
And but
my point is, I was just trying to equate it back to the European Cup, that there are some teams there. Okay, we might disagree on the Exeter thing, but there's certainly Bath aren't a good team.
No.
We've beaten them already, and I beat them with a very young team. We were naive against them, and our scrum disintegrated over in the wreck. But apart from that, you know, we had an opportunity to beat them over there, and we didn't. So, you know, it's not all. Oh my God, the end of rugby in Ireland is on the verge now.
It's just been a World Cup season,
Yeah,
and the league
it's been
the league that donates the most players to the World Cup has the shittest season. So yeah, of course.
You've also got to look at the fact. I mean, I was watching Against the Head last night, and Darragh O'Brien was trying to hold a sort of Damocles over Leinster rugby or over Irish rugby. But I mean, Jerry Thornley and Alan Quinn were there, and they weren't having it. They were. I mean, their attitude was, and it's the attitude I share. And I think
must
it's the
watch
accurate
that.
one is that, you know, it's just a bad year. It happened. It happens to every team. Teams can't go on forever. No team goes on forever.
Bit of
Because-
rebuilding.
But,
There has to be
but
rebuilding.
he ignored a brilliant game of rugby on Friday night.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
He ignored
But
the
it didn't
fact.
suit the narrative.
No, of course not. But there was 16,500 people up in the stadium in Belfast. There was, I agree, there wasn't 43,000, but there was probably 35,000 or 37,000 in the Aviva, which is still a huge crowd and probably the biggest sporting crowd in Ireland at the weekend.
God, do you think there were more people at that than there were at Galway versus Cavan in National Football League Division 2 when Cavan finally returned to Division 1, their rightful place? There probably were. Yeah, so I mean, you can be all doom and gloom if you want. Now, and there are things in Leinster rugby and in Irish rugby I'm not happy about.
Of
But
course.
there's lots of stuff I'm really fucking happy about. There's good players coming through, young players.
Yeah.
There's a really bright future. I'm hoping that our coaches are learning as quickly as our players are, because if they are, we're in good hands.
Is Cullen getting an easy ride because it's his first season and people are like, well, can't be too critical of him because he's a rookie?
He hasn't, since we bummed out of Europe, he hasn't really got a lash.
Well, it was a very
At all.
good. Went on a great run there until like kind of for 2 games we were beaten, but up to that from Christmas onwards,
I think
it was a very good run.
I think he did. I think he earned it because of what he's done for Leinster in the past. I think certainly from fans he has a certain amount of credit in the bank, and maybe he deserves it. He has to get to. I think he has to get to the Pro 12 final this year though, because our European run at the end of the day, in the cold grey light of day, our European run was dreadful.
It was dreadful.
Well, I mean, he's coming after our worst season ever when we famously qualified for the semi-final of
Yeah.
Europe and
But I appreciate
that's what I'm
fell
saying,
over in
you
the
know?
sick.
but lads, like
12.
you're talking about you're not really comparing apples and apples, because you had Matt O'Connor, who's been a head coach in Leicester. You know, a very
there's
experienced
inexperience
coach.
involved.
So
indeed,
if you
yeah.
and as Leinster have done, they've gone down the route of selecting a novice team.
Cheap, available.
Okay, but still novice.
Matt O'Connor was a shit fit, though.
Yeah, well, like he may or may
Leicester.
not have been. We don't know what goes on. But the point is that, like, we currently have
didn't-
Sexton
didn't suit us.
and Dempsey there now. Both of them are rookies in, you know, with both of them. One guy has 1 year's coaching experience. Gervin had a couple of seasons coaching the A team. If you're going to go down, you're going to say, right, this is our coaching ticket. Then you're going to have to say, right, this season mightn't be great. Next season mightn't be great.
Yeah, you have to take
But
it.
you have to take a long-term
yeah,
view. You
absolutely,
can't
yeah.
go, oh yeah, well, we want to win the Heineken Cup this year. We want to win the Pro 12. Like, come on.
I totally agree.
My position in terms of the coaching appointments and the coaching roles within Leinster Rugby is, funny enough, it's the same this year as it was last year. Last year, I didn't think anybody should have been sacked. I think guys should have been hired in supporting the coach. And this year, if it doesn't work out for Gerv and Leo, they shouldn't be sacked.
Well-
Somebody should be. So they might need help under them.
I've said it a few times that I think we're better off with Leo Cullen having a rookie year than Matt O'Connor having a lame duck year, because that's what it would have been. They would have been counting down through this year, and it would have been a wasted year. And when I started to say the guy was a bad fit for Leinster, he was. He didn't work out. He didn't suit our style of play. He didn't suit anybody. I'm not saying he didn't get on with the people or he had a clash of personality. I think he got on very well. Seemed to be a very nice guy. His coaching didn't suit Leinster, in my opinion. And not only that, but Leo Cullen, while he doesn't have the 5 years at Leicester as a coach, he bleeds Leinster rugby. Well, he may not have the coaching credentials. He knows
On
the
other
team.
hand,
He
on
knows
the other side of that is Robbie O'Connor bleeds Leinster Rugby.
I
I still
suppose-
wouldn't make him head coach.
I
mean,
suppose you could
sorry,
say the same
Robbie.
about Axel in Munster.
you know,
but-
you have to do it. I don't think the process was managed well at all. But it's what we have, and now we have to support our guys because they are our guys. You know.
The point I'm making is that Matt O'Connor didn't appear to know a lot about Leinster rugby or fit in with its traditions very well, whereas Leo Cullen might not have the experience, but he knows all of that stuff and how to do it.
He also shot himself in the foot. If you remember having a go with the IRFU,
Yeah, that was
directly Joe Schmidt.
Pretty stupid, all right.
And, I
Oh,
think
yeah,
it was curtains for him from
Yeah, I
the
mean,
minute he did that.
Cullen knows that he's Joe Schmidt's bitch. That's. I mean, he is. I mean, sure, what? That's the situation. I mean, he does what he's told, or he leaves.
Well, anyway, that's a
So-
depressing thought.
So you two experts on Welsh rugby, you've got a bit of news for us.
I'm still reading
Yeah, they're
this
still
news.
not English. Yeah, basically the Newport Gwent Dragons, who have been in significant trouble both on and off the pitch, basically ever since they started.
Especially lately, though.
Yeah, the company is being reformatted with the 50% that's owned by Newport Gwent Dragons and the 50% that's owned by the WRU been transferred to a new independent company that will run rugby in that area. What it's going to be called, who's going to call it, whatever it's going to be called, hasn't been decided as yet. Huh?
Newport.
I know, but we don't. They won't say that out loud just yet. It'll be the first and only so far fully independent. I don't know what to call it. Club, region, franchise.
I think, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, I think regional rugby has been seen as a failure, and I don't think they're too concerned with the fact that they're regions now. They've spent years trying to kind of tell people that you should support this region because you live here, and that whole concept. Okay, the Ospreys have bought into it, but it just hasn't gone down in Wales. So I think they're just trying to get back to a more kind of.
But like, isn't it not the exact same as people criticising? Oh, the band playing during the match to try and generate some fake atmosphere. It's the same thing. Those regions are completely fake. They're
They're constructed.
constructed.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Badly constructed and then badly reconstructed in the
Well,
when
that
Celtic
was the
Warriors
worst
went
bit.
down.
Like-
That was the worst bit. Yeah.
we live in County Fingal, but like no one. Like we're from Dublin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even though, and you could be from Dunleary, Rathdown, but you're from Dublin. Like that's the county that we're from, or we're from the province of Leinster, and it's been there for hundreds of years.
Mm.
they didn't have that kind of structure that we had, and the Scots to a certain extent had. So when they decided that they needed bigger sides than just the club sides, it was always going to be, it was always going to be troublesome.
Well,
I mean, they set up what, 5 regions, 4 of them have failed.
yeah, well, as regions, yeah.
Yeah.
As regions, yeah. As teams, not necessarily.
No, not as teams, but it's the idea.
as regions.
The regional idea has failed. I mean,
And it's also got away from it kind of did from the beginning. It got out of control of the WRU. So now they're neither fish nor fowl. They're not fully independent because they're kind of dependent on the WRU, but they're not controlled by the WRU either. So they're not standalone and that's the story of Welsh rugby's life, because they were much stronger than the Irish clubs. Like, you know, there was a thought that we would put Cork Con and Shannon and whoever into the Lansdowne, maybe into the Heineken Cup in '95. We didn't. Because we realised, listen lads, this isn't going to float. We have these geographical areas, and they have a representative team, and
I remember talking.
that
to
worked out very well for
a
us.
former
Whereas
president.
their teams were too strong not to go in as teams, but they were just a tad too weak to sustain European rugby. So they had, you know, if they had been either weaker and regionalism might have worked, or if they had been stronger and regionalisation wouldn't have been necessary, Welsh rugby will be in a much better state. So it's no one's fault really. It's a frustrating thing about where their game was at the time.
I remember talking to a former president of Bohemians Rugby Club, which then became UL, but he was president of them when they were Bows in 2006, and he was still convinced that the day of the club in Europe still wasn't over. But anyway, no, if I were ever to write a book about Welsh rugby, which I wouldn't, because
There's not that many pencils in the world.
You've been a goth and you don't want to go back to that depression again.
I would call it neither fish nor good red meat, because that has been what, as you say, that's been what has affected them ever since. Ironically, the one region that any of us would have put money on failing before it started is the only one that succeeded. And is successful, both on and off the pitch, and seems to be working, and seems to have...
Has been since its inception the biggest selling regional jersey. You see them in every city in Wales. Yeah. You know, you see them in other regions, towns, and walking about
Ospreys, by the way.
The streets of Llanelli or Cardiff. You know,
an MP used the term to describe that area in the House of Commons. He used the term Australia.
There you go.
It has gained a certain amount of traction, but as far as Cardiff are concerned, as far as Llanelli are concerned, as far as Newport are concerned, it hasn't succeeded. And obviously Bridgend and Pontypridd have their own particular view on it. I mean, Jason, you and we all remember Newport. Just before regionalisation came in, Newport were the strongest Welsh club, and the most successful Welsh club, and a hugely popular Welsh club,
and they had an absolute raucous crowd. I mean, it was...
We still do, but just smaller.
Well, but it was packed. I remember Munster playing against them, Leinster playing against them in 2 seasons in a row. The floodlights failed, but they would have had as big a crowd as what Munster were getting down in Tobin Park at the time, maybe 10,000 or something.
in the Hazel stand, in the Hazel Terrace. I remember Percy Montgomery being there as well for them. So, I mean, their fall was considerable. I don't think that the Newport Gwent Dragons, the whole thing between Newport and Ebba Vale, I think the chairman of Ebba Vale walked out in disgust pretty much instantly when the club was founded. The whole Gwent thing just never got any purchase in the Gwent Valleys. It just didn't.
I don't know. I think there is quite a lot of people from the Gwent Valleys who support the Dragons.
I mean, they still, as far as they're concerned, it's still Newport. It's called Newport. They play in Newport's ground in Rodney Parade.
I think that's much more so with Cardiff and Pontypridd.
Oh well, that's huge. That's a whole different bag of spanners entirely.
Well, and you mentioned the Ospreys. I mean, there's a great story that of a former Neath player who was told a story about his father told him that his grandfather took his father up to the little hill so that he could watch Swansea getting bombed by the Germans. That's how much dislike they had.
They did not like one another. But funny enough,
and there's about 5 miles between the two places.
Funny enough, that's why it worked. That they had so much baggage that they couldn't actually fit it all through the door.
I like that metaphor very good. Yeah.
Whereas, and then there was the whole thing with the Celtic Warriors collapse. You had Bridgend been walloped into one region, which didn't actually do them any, you didn't actually do them any harm. But then you had Pontypridd been walloped into the Cardiff Blues region, which just did not work at all. It was a disaster.
Well, hopefully you can give some stability to the Dragons.
Yeah, I think much needed stability. I mean, because
we never quite got to the bottom of exactly what's happening. I think they've just been put up for sale, and
basically,
we don't know who's buying
well, we
them
don't
yet.
know. We don't know if there's already investors agreed, or I mean, it's very, the meeting was only today and the announcement was only today. We don't know what the situation is. Don't even know the name of the new entity. But you know, I always liked Newport. I always liked. I mean, some people find their crowd a bit vulgar.
You like taking your life in your hands, is that what you're saying?
I always found them really, really funny. I really did. I mean, some of the funniest stuff I've heard on terraces has come off that Newport terrace.
The first time I was ever at a match in Newport, the guy, I'd never been to the town before, and the guy in the hotel said, "Are you going out dressed like that?" And we said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, don't let them see your colours." And I said, "What? I thought I knew the Dragon fans were a little bit. I didn't think they'd kick the head off you." No, it's not the Dragon fans. It's the other ruffians, the soccer crowd. So they don't like the rugby people, and they'll probably so. It's the kind of a town where the pubs are always packed at 10 o'clock in the morning on Dole Day. That's the kind of a town it is. You see all sorts on a night out in Newport.
Well, one game we neglected to chat about was Connacht's away semi-final of the Amlin, or whatever it's called now, to Grenoble.
So I'm just thinking, I've got this mad Gavin and Stacey kind of thing going. It's going to be interesting to see Connacht give him a good rattle. If there's one guy who knows Connacht though, Bernard Jackman. I mean, he was Mr. Connacht for a while in terms of
Move down there and get your Irish cap.
Yeah, basically. But he played very well for them while he was there. A lot of their stuff was based around him.
He might find that all he knows is wrong.
He might do. It's changed a lot. He's no Egypt though. Grenoble aren't having the greatest of seasons though.
No.
They're mid-table now.
Yeah, they're not having a great season.
I'm not sure how seriously he'll take it.
I think they are, because they're
it's
mid-table.
their only way into Europe.
There was a very good article in the Sunday Times the weekend with Mike Prendergast, and just talking about, and he said he never knew Jackman, but the mutual friend, I think was Paul O'Connell, and he was desperate to get into some form of coaching, and Jackman said, "Oh, look, I've got forwards coach, I'll keep an eye out for you," and then rang him and said, "Look, there might be an opportunity for you to take up the skills coach." And eventually then they worked for a year, and then Jackman got promoted to head coach, and he brought him in then as backs coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice. I mean, it's nice to see Bernard. I like Bernard Jackman. I've met him a couple times. I found him a very nice guy. Really dead sound. It's nice to see him. I hope he loses. But
don't we
that's nothing personal.
If nothing else, you get an extra.
He's created
a
little Paddy enclave down there. There's a couple of Irish lads in and around the organisation as well. Although one of them's leaving next season.
The big red-headed lad from Ulster.
No,
Hart is going to.
But hopefully it kind of go well down there. I'm feeling that Grenoble might be taking this a lot more serious, or not taking it a lot more seriously, but have more riding on it than Connacht do. Connacht are pretty much guaranteed.
It's a nicety.
They are guaranteed.
They are almost mathematical
European
certainties.
rugby next season. Grenoble aren't.
Yeah, I think they'd need, even mathematically, they'd only need a couple of losing bonus points to guarantee, to guarantee a playoff nearly at this stage.
So I want Connacht to win. I wouldn't be surprised if Grenoble's need been greater that they did, because Connacht might have their eyes on other things.
We shall see.
I mean, Connacht are genuine title contenders. Title contenders.
Yeah, but also don't forget that they have whoever wins this game has Quins at home.
Yeah.
Now Quins might be a hard team to knock over in this contest because they're a real cup team.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot riding on it too, because I don't think they're going to qualify for Europe, are they?
No.
So they've got a lot riding on it too, and Gloucester, who are way down the Premiership.
And Newport, don't forget Newport.
They're playing Newport.
I know.
So we'll see. That'll be interesting. I mean, the only Irish and Celtic League representation are the Dragons and Connacht, and they're in the second competition. So
How times have changed.
Well, we'll be probably watching the second competition as much as we're watching the first one this year. You never know.
So it'd be. I'd hope Connacht will do it. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, but just simply because they have more important things to do.
I'd love to see them get a day out in the sports ground against Quins. I mean, we've seen them do wonders down there against Quins.
I say Quins
lots of
Quins
times.
would be shitting themselves if they ended up having to go to the sports
Remember the
grounds.
9-8 a few years ago, where they knocked the shit out of Quins.
And I'll tell you one thing: whatever Quins thought they knew about Connacht, they don't know it anymore because it's a very, very different side.
Yeah.
Perhaps, maybe no, but Grenoble's need is greater. It might come down to that.
We'll see.
Yep. Well, my boys, thanks a million, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.